A lot of aquariums look cheap even when the fish are perfectly fine. The water may be clean, but the whole tank still feels flat. Plants look weaker, fish colors look duller, and depth just disappears. The usual cause is not the fish, the filter, or the hardscape. The usual cause is the empty, bright mess behind the tank. White walls, cables, furniture, and room clutter kill the whole look. The cheap trick is a simple black background behind the aquarium. A $2 black sheet can change the entire visual weight fast. It makes fish colors hit harder without changing a single fish. It makes plants stand out instead of blending into the room. It makes the tank look deeper, darker, cleaner, and more premium. The change feels expensive because the eye stops seeing background noise. The full premium look guide is linked in the description. It gives the exact material, exact setup, exact light angle, and exact checklist. The trick is simple, but the exact setup decides whether it looks rich or cheap. Cheap-looking tanks usually have one thing in common behind the glass. A bright room is visible through every gap around the plants. Cords cut through the background and make the setup feel messy. Reflections bounce off the rear glass and flatten the whole scene. Fish lose contrast because the background has no visual control. Redfish look weaker when a pale wall sits behind them. Green plants look thinner when room clutter breaks the silhouette. Dark substrate loses impact when the back of the tank looks random. The black background fixes that by creating separation and contrast. Fish edges become sharper because their colors stop bleeding into the room. Plants look fuller because each leaf stands out against the dark field. Driftwood texture becomes richer because the shape reads more clearly. Even cheap decor can look better when the background stops fighting it. This works on tiny tanks, mid-tanks, and larger tanks too. It works on planted tanks, shrimp tanks, betta tanks, and community tanks. The trick starts with the back panel, not the front glass. A cheap black poster board can work for a fast test. Black vinyl, foam sheet, or matte film can work for a cleaner finish. Matte black usually looks better than glossy black for one reason. Glossy surfaces can reflect the room and ruin the clean, dark effect. Matte black absorbs more visual noise and keeps the background calmer. The sheet should cover the full back panel, not just the middle. Small uncovered edges make the setup look unfinished and lazy. Uneven cuts make the tank feel homemade in the wrong way. Bubbles, wrinkles, and crooked corners can destroy the premium effect fast. That is why placement matters almost as much as the material itself. The guide in the description shows the exact setup order to copy. It covers the exact material choice, exact size, exact placement, and exact mistakes. That guide is what stops a cheap trick from looking cheap. The next part that changes everything is the light angle. A strong front reflection can make the tank look flat and harsh. Light bouncing off the glass can hide the whole premium effect. When the light hits, cleaner and lower, fish colors punch harder. Plants look less washed out and more layered from front to back. The black background creates depth, then the light makes that depth visible. This is why the same tank can look average 1 minute and premium the next. A lot of owners change fish, plants, and decor before fixing the background. They spend more money and still keep the same cheap overall look. The rear view stays messy, so the whole tank still reads messy. This trick wins because it improves the whole frame at once. It upgrades the fish, the plants, the wood, the rock, and the water visually. It also hides ugly cords and equipment behind the tank better. That alone can make a setup feel 10 times more intentional. The tank starts looking staged instead of randomly placed in a room. Before the background goes on, the rear glass should be checked first. Dust, watermarks, and grime behind the tank can stay visible through the sheet. A dirty back panel kills the crisp look before it even starts. A quick wipe makes the dark background sit cleaner and flatter. Then, the black sheet goes on square, straight, and edge to edge. Once it is on, the change usually hits immediately. Fish colors jump forward instead of floating in a pale, empty box. Green plants stop blending into the room and start forming real shapes. The tank feels deeper because the eye no longer sees the wall behind it. Hardscape details look more expensive because the silhouette gets stronger. Even the water can look cleaner when the background gets darker. Tiny particles stand out less when the whole rear view is controlled. The tank starts reading like one clean composition instead of loose parts. This is where most people get excited and then mess it up. They leave visible gaps at the sides and top of the panel. They use glossy material that reflects windows and lamps. They slap the sheet on crooked and wonder why it looks homemade. They keep cables hanging like dark noodles across the back glass. They skip the light adjustment and lose half the visual payoff. The guide linked in the description covers those exact mistakes step by step. It gives the full premium look system, not just the cheap background trick. That is how a $2 change starts making a tank look expensive. The biggest visual jump usually happens in the first few seconds after setup. The tank instantly looks deeper because the wall behind it disappears. Fish start looking brighter because their colors stop fighting the background. Orange fish glow more against black than against a white wall. Blue fish look cleaner and sharper with a dark rear field. Red plants stand out harder when the whole back panel goes dark. Green plants look richer because each stem gets cleaner separation. Silverfish get more contrast because the body outline becomes clearer. Even dark fish become easier to read when the background is controlled. The whole scene starts feeling intentional instead of accidental. Cheap tanks often look cheap because the eye sees the room first. Expensive-looking tanks make the eye see the aquascape first. That is the real job of the black background trick. It tells the eye where to focus and what to ignore. It removes the distraction behind the fish and keeps attention inside the glass. This effect becomes even stronger when the front glass is spotless. Smudges and mineral marks can break the premium illusion fast. Clean glass plus dark background makes the whole tank feel sharper. A quick front wipe can make fish look more vivid immediately. A clean waterline also matters more than most owners think. White crust near the rim can make a good tank look neglected. A dark background makes that kind of neglect stand out even faster. That is why the premium look comes from a sequence, not one move alone. First, the background goes dark. Then the glass gets clean. Then the cords get hidden. Then the light gets adjusted. Then the tank starts looking far more expensive than it really is. The guide in the description gives that exact sequence and order. It also gives the exact material list and exact placement measurements. That is the part that makes the result look polished instead of improvised. Cords are one of the fastest ways to ruin the luxury effect. Black cables hanging in random lines look messy even in a good tank. Airline tubing crossing the back panel kills the clean silhouette. Heater wires and filter cords can break the whole premium illusion. A cleaner cable route makes the dark background look more deliberate. The same goes for random gear stuck in obvious positions. Loud visible equipment can make the tank feel more like a workshop. Cleaner placement makes the setup feel more like a display piece. The next hidden mistake is using a black background that is too weak. Thin material can let room light bleed through from behind. That weakens the contrast and makes the tank feel washed out again. A stronger matte black field gives a fuller and more solid premium look. Another mistake is stopping after the background and changing nothing else. If the light is still harsh, glare can flatten the whole scene. If the front glass is still dusty, the tank still feels cheap. If the cords still show, the room still leaks into the composition. Premium-looking tanks usually feel premium because everything supports the same look. The fish do not need to be rare for this trick to work. The plants do not need to be expensive for this trick to work. The hardscape does not need to be fancy for this trick to work. A controlled background can upgrade ordinary elements fast. That is why this trick is so strong for beginner tanks too. A simple setup can suddenly start looking dramatic and intentional. Betta tanks get more contrast and body color instantly. Community tanks get more depth because the background stops stealing attention. Shrimp tanks can look cleaner because the back view feels calmer. Planted tanks get more silhouette and stronger visual layering. Dark substrate looks richer when the rear view matches the mood. Light substrate can also look more premium when the back panel anchors the scene. This is not about making every tank dark and moody. This is about controlling the frame so the tank reads better. Good framing is why show tanks look expensive in photos and short clips. The background is doing more work than most people realize. It helps the camera see the fish instead of the room behind them. It helps the eye read plant shapes instead of wall clutter. It helps the whole tank feel like one designed object. That is the difference between a fish tank and a display tank. The full premium look guide is linked in the description. It gives the exact background material, exact cut method, exact placement, and exact light angle. It also gives the full checklist for cords, glare, glass, and clean finishing. The video gives the trick. The guide gives the exact version that looks expensive on camera and in person. Once the setup is dialed in, the payoff keeps showing up every day. Feeding clips look better because fish colors hit harder against black. Photos look cleaner because the tank has more contrast and depth. The whole room can feel better because the aquarium looks more premium. Guests notice the tank faster because it stops blending into the background. Even one cheap fish can look more impressive in a cleaner frame. A tank that looked average can start looking carefully designed. That is why a $2 black background can change the whole value feel.